Have you ever noticed how fear often feels louder than faith? How anxiety can creep in, painting the worst pictures in your mind before life has even begun to unfold? Let me remind you of a simple but powerful truth. Fear is only misplaced imagination. What if you turned that same imagination toward faith, hope, and expectation of good? Suddenly, the very energy that once chained you becomes the force that sets you free. Every anxious thought is like a seed. But ask yourself, what kind of harvest do you want in your life? If you sow worry, you will reap unrest. If you plant courage, you will reap peace. Isn't it amazing to realize that your garden of life is not shaped by chance, but by choice? And choice is born in your words. Think about it. Your words create your world. When you speak fear, fear multiplies. When you declare peace, peace responds. When you say, I am safe, I am guided, I am fearless, the atmosphere around you begins to shift. Isn't that incredible? But here's the secret. Anxiety cannot stand where divine order is present. Chaos only thrives in confusion. Harmony dissolves it instantly, and harmony is not something you chase. It's something you claim. You have the authority to say, I live in perfect order. My mind is calm. My path is clear. Can fear argue with that? Never. There is a law, an eternal, unshakable law, the law of substitution. It simply means this: you cannot hold fear and faith at the same time.
Que no
One
lo
must
quiero.
leave for the other to stay. So why not replace fear with the expectation of good? Why not tell life, I am ready for the best? When you do, miracles begin to unfold, silently but powerfully, before your very eyes. And remember this final truth: courage is not the absence of fear. It is the refusal to give fear the final word. You may feel the tremor, but you still move forward. You may hear the whisper of doubt, but you still choose hope. And in that choice, in that bold refusal, anxiety loses its grip and freedom takes its place. So I ask you today, will you keep surrendering to fear, or will you rise, plant seeds of courage, speak words of peace, and expect the good? The power is in your hands, the voice is in your heart, and the victory is already yours. Fear is a fascinating thing, isn't it? It appears so real, so overwhelming, so convincing, yet it has no substance of its own. Fear is simply imagination wearing the wrong costume. Think about it. Every moment of fear is built on something that has not yet happened. It is your mind creating a picture, painting a scene, rehearsing a disaster that has not even taken place. How astonishing is that? Your imagination is a powerful tool. It is like a projector, casting images onto the screen of your mind. But what happens when you aim that projector at the dark? You get nightmares. You get shadows. You get monsters that seem larger than life. Fear thrives in that darkness because it feeds on what is unseen, what is uncertain, what is exaggerated. But here is the truth: fear does not exist outside of you. It is not a storm in the world, it is a storm in your thoughts. Isn't that eye-opening? Now imagine if you flipped the switch. Imagine if you took that same projector, that same imagination, and instead of painting worst-case scenarios, you painted the best ones. What if, instead of saying, what if I fail, you whispered, what if I succeed beyond my wildest dreams? What if, instead of trembling at the thought of loss, you declared, what if this brings me gain I cannot yet see? Suddenly, the very tool that imprisoned you becomes the key to your freedom. Fear is misplaced imagination. It is the misuse of a sacred gift. Imagination was never meant to be a weapon against you. It was meant to be a servant for you. Yet how often do people take that sacred gift and aim it in the wrong direction? They build castles of despair. They construct bridges of doubt. They design whole worlds of failure in their minds, then wonder why their hearts feel so heavy. But what if that same energy, that same creative force, was pointed toward faith, hope, and expectation of good? Wouldn't life change in an instant? Consider how children dream. They imagine endlessly, and rarely is their imagination filled with doom. A child can turn a stick into a sword of glory, a cardboard box into a spaceship to the stars. Fear has no grip on them because their imagination is placed in wonder, not in worry. So what happened to us? At what point did we let imagination become our enemy instead of our ally? Faith is imagination redeemed. Faith is the decision to let your inner pictures align with possibility, not tragedy. When you choose faith, you are not ignoring reality. You are shaping it. You are declaring that your imagination will no longer paint storms but sunrises, no longer build prisons but pathways, and ask yourself, what feels more natural to your soul, dread or hope? Which energy lifts you and which one crushes you? Why would anyone choose the heavy when the light is available? Fear whispers, what if everything goes wrong? Faith answers, what if everything goes right? Fear says, what if you stumble and fall? Faith replies, what if you rise higher than ever before? Fear trembles at the unknown, but faith sings within it. One drains your life, the other fills it, and the miracle is, you decide which voice is louder. Isn't that incredible? Science tells us that the body reacts to imagined danger as if it were real. The heartbeat quickens, the breath shortens, the muscles tense. But doesn't the same body also respond when you imagine joy, peace, and victory? The heart slows, the breath steadies, the muscles relax. In both cases, it is not the outer world that dictates the reaction. It is the inner world. So why keep feeding the imagination of fear when the imagination of faith brings harmony, healing, and strength? Fear is nothing but misplaced imagination. Faith is its rightful place. When you choose faith, you reclaim the steering wheel of your mind. You tell your imagination, no more shadows, no more monsters. Paint me a sunrise, paint me a promise, paint me a victory. And in that moment, fear dissolves, not because the world outside changed, but because the world inside did. Every thought you think is like a seed cast into the soil of your mind. Can you see it? Anxiety is not just a feeling floating aimlessly. It is a seed, and like all seeds, it grows. The more you water it with your attention, the stronger it becomes. And what does an anxious seed produce? It produces a harvest of unrest, sleepless nights, tension in the body, doubt in the heart. Yet we rarely stop to ask ourselves, why am I planting this? Would I ever sow weeds in a garden I hope to bloom with roses? An anxious thought is tiny at first. It might begin as a whisper, what if this goes wrong? But left unchecked, it sends roots into your heart. Before long, one anxious thought invites another, then another, until the entire inner garden feels overrun with vines of worry. Isn't it striking how quickly one small what if can become a forest of fear? But the truth is, you are the gardener. You hold the power to decide what seeds to plant. If you recognize that every anxious thought is a seed, then you must also recognize that courage is a seed too. And courage, when planted, grows just as quickly, just as powerfully. The difference is in the harvest. Where worry drains you, courage uplifts you. Where anxiety closes doors, courage opens them. Which garden would you rather walk through each day? The one filled with thorns of fear, or the one bursting with blossoms of strength? Worry is easy because it feels familiar. The soil of the mind quickly accepts it. But isn't it strange that what is destructive often feels easier than what is constructive? Courage takes a choice. It asks you to dig, to plant, to water, to guard. Yet what a harvest it brings. A harvest of calm nights, steady decisions, and a heart that beats in rhythm with confidence instead of panic. Think of a farmer. He never plants one seed expecting another to grow. He does not place corn in the ground and wait for grapes. Why then do we plant worry and expect peace? Why do we sow fear and still hope for freedom? Life is not mocked, it gives back what we plant. So if you want courage, if you want strength, then you must plant them deliberately, consciously, consistently. How do you plant courage? With words, with vision, with repetition. Instead of saying, I can't handle this, you declare, I am equipped, I am steady, I am strong. Instead of picturing failure, you imagine success. Instead of feeding the seed of dread, you water the seed of boldness, and the soil of your mind responds. It cannot resist a courageous seed any more than earth can resist the growth of spring. Notice something powerful. Courage is not the absence of anxious thoughts. Even the bravest feel the whisper of worry. The difference is, they do not let that whisper take root. They pluck it out while it is still a seed. They refuse to water it. They turn instead to seeds of courage, planting visions of victory, repeating words of strength, expecting a harvest of peace. Isn't it inspiring to realize you can do the same? And here is the law. You cannot plant two seeds in the same spot. If you choose courage, worry cannot stay. If you plant boldness, fear must leave. That is the beauty of substitution. One seed will always push the other out. So why not plant the one that leads to life, to freedom, to joy? Think of the countless hours people spend rehearsing disasters in their minds. They water seeds of anxiety with their constant attention. But what if that same energy was poured into planting courage? What if every time worry said, "You will fail," you answered, "I will rise"? What if every time anxiety painted a storm, you imagined sunshine breaking through the clouds? The garden of your life would transform, would it not? Every anxious thought is a seed, but it is not the only seed available. Courage waits in your hand too. The choice is always before you. Will you sow worry, or will you sow strength? Will you cultivate fear, or will you cultivate boldness? The soil will not argue. It will grow whatever you place within it, and the harvest will always return to you multiplied. So why not plant courage instead of worry? Why not choose the seed that leads to peace, strength, and freedom? Words are not empty sounds, they are living forces. Each word spoken is like a brushstroke on the canvas of life. What picture are you painting with the language that leaves your lips each day? Are you speaking words that create harmony, or words that multiply fear? It may sound simple, but the reality is profound. Your words shape your world. Consider this. When a person constantly says, "I'm so anxious," "I'm so tired," "everything always goes wrong," what world are they building? They are constructing walls of fear, brick by brick, until they are surrounded by the very prison their own words have formed. Isn't that a shocking thought? Yet how often do we do this unconsciously, letting phrases of defeat roll off our tongues without realizing we are creating an atmosphere that matches those words? On the other hand, think of the person who speaks peace into their days. They say, "I am calm, I am guided, I am supported, things are working out for me." These words are not mere affirmations. They are seeds of reality, spoken into existence. They shape not only the mind of the speaker, but the very circumstances they walk into. Have you ever noticed how speaking peace changes the energy in a room instantly? The law is simple. Words are containers of energy. Fearful words carry the energy of fear. Peaceful words carry the energy of harmony. When you speak, you are either releasing chaos or inviting order. Which do you want in your world? Even science supports this truth. Studies in psychology reveal that constant negative self-talk increases stress, anxiety, and even physical illness. The body listens to the words you speak. The heart beats faster when you say, "I am afraid." The body relaxes when you declare, "I am safe." Isn't that extraordinary? Your words don't just float in the air. They echo in your nervous system. They sculpt your emotions. They set the rhythm of your life. Think of words as commands to your inner world. When fear rises and you say, "I can't handle this," your mind obeys, your body obeys, your spirit obeys. But if in that same moment you choose different words, "I am steady, I am strong, I will get through this," everything within you begins to align with that declaration. Doesn't it make sense then that your life bends toward the words you consistently release? So many people underestimate casual speech. They throw around phrases like, "I'm doomed," "Nothing works out for me," "I always fail." They think they are joking, but the subconscious mind does not joke, it records, it accepts, it acts. Why would you speak curses over your own life when you could be declaring blessings? Why water weeds when you could water flowers? Peaceful words are not weak, they are powerful shields. When you say, I am calm, you are not denying that storms exist. You are refusing to let them define your inner state. When you say, I trust the process, you are not ignoring challenges. You are anchoring yourself in confidence that life is unfolding in divine order. Isn't that the kind of strength everyone craves? And notice how words don't just affect you. They affect those around you too. Speak fear to a group and watch how anxiety spreads. Speak peace to the same group and watch how shoulders relax, breaths deepen, and hope rises. Isn't it astonishing how one person's words can shift the atmosphere of an entire room? Here is the challenge. Every day you have thousands of chances to decide which world you will build. Each sentence, each phrase, each whispered thought is a brick. Will you use those bricks to build walls of fear or pathways of peace? The choice is always in your mouth. The truth is, words are prophetic. When you declare fear, you invite fear's companions: confusion, panic, despair. When you declare peace, you invite peace's companions: clarity, confidence, strength. Which company do you prefer to keep? So guard your tongue. Train it to speak what you desire, not what you dread. Let it declare calm when the world shouts chaos. Let it speak hope when circumstances whisper failure. The power is not in the storm outside. It is in the declaration inside. Say, I am at peace, and watch peace answer. Say, I am strong, and watch strength rise. Say, I am safe, and see safety unfold. Your words create your world. Fear or peace, both wait on the tip of your tongue. Which one will you choose to declare today? Anxiety is often the child of disorder. It thrives in confusion, in scattered thoughts, in tangled plans. Have you noticed how the mind feels when it is overwhelmed? Thoughts collide, fears multiply, and everything seems louder than your own calm voice. That is chaos at work, but here is the eternal truth. Anxiety cannot survive where divine order is present. Can chaos stand where harmony rules? Never. Look at nature. Does it rush? Does it panic? Does it ever lose its rhythm? The sun rises and sets in perfect time. The tides follow their faithful pull. Seasons change without hesitation. There is an order greater than human striving, a pattern that holds the universe together. And when you align yourself with that order, doesn't your heart begin to breathe easier? Anxiety melts because suddenly you realize you are not lost, you are not abandoned, you are held within a larger design. Chaos tells you everything is out of control. But is it really? Or is it that you have stepped out of alignment with the order already present? When your thoughts race in every direction, when your plans contradict your inner truth, when your heart is divided, anxiety has room to grow. But when you pause, when you align, when you declare harmony, chaos loses its ground. It cannot survive where peace has taken authority. Isn't that powerful? Think of a room cluttered with noise, with mess, with disorder. You can barely move, you can hardly breathe. But once everything is put in its proper place, once order is restored, how different does the room feel? Isn't it astonishing how a shift from clutter to order changes your entire energy? The same is true of the mind. Put things in their rightful place: faith above fear, peace above panic, clarity above confusion. And the anxiety that once felt overwhelming suddenly dissolves. Divine order is not about forcing life to bend to your control. It is about trusting that there is a pattern already woven into existence, a rhythm already established, a harmony already available. When you let go of frantic striving and choose to rest in that rhythm, doesn't everything become lighter? Anxiety is the attempt to hold the universe in your hands. Peace is the surrender that realizes the universe already has hands stronger than yours. Consider music. When each note follows its place in the scale, the melody is sweet. But what happens when notes clash, when rhythm is ignored, when timing is lost. The result is noise, chaos, tension. Anxiety is that noise in the soul, too many notes played out of order. But harmony comes when you return to the true scale, the right rhythm, the divine pattern. Then every note, every thought, every action finds its rightful place, and the melody of peace is restored. Isn't that a beautiful picture? Anxiety often comes from trying to force what is not ready, or resisting what has already arrived. But order has its own timing. Seeds sprout in their season, rivers flow in their course, stars shine in their appointed time. Why would life treat you any differently? When you trust the order, you stop pushing against time. You stop grasping at control. You step into the flow of harmony, and suddenly the chaos inside begins to quiet. And isn't it true? When you are aligned, decisions become clearer. When your inner world is calm, you hear the guidance you could not hear in the storm. Anxiety clouds, but order clarifies. Anxiety scatters, but harmony gathers. Anxiety drains, but alignment empowers. Which one would you choose? You have authority to declare order over your life. You can speak to confusion and say, "You no longer belong here." You can call peace into your mind and say, "Every thought falls into its rightful place." You can affirm, "My steps are guided, my path is clear, my life unfolds in perfect rhythm." And when you speak this, when you believe this, when you live this, can chaos argue? Can anxiety stay? Impossible. Divine order is like a law, constant, unshakable, eternal. Anxiety is like a shadow. It only survives when the light is blocked. The moment harmony shines, the shadow vanishes. So, why keep feeding chaos when alignment with order is always available? Why live in confusion when clarity is only one choice away? Anxiety dissolves when you align with divine order, because in order there is safety, in order there is rhythm, in order there is peace. And truly, can chaos stand where harmony rules? It never has, and it never will. There is a silent law at work in your life, whether you recognize it or not. It is the law of substitution. This law declares a simple but profound truth. No two opposing thoughts can dominate your mind at the same time. Fear and faith cannot sit on the same throne. Anxiety and expectation of good cannot both rule your heart. One must give way to the other. Isn't that astonishing? Think of it like light and darkness. You cannot fill a room with light and expect darkness to remain. The moment you flip the switch, the shadow disappears. The law of substitution works in the same way. Replace fear with expectation of good, and fear has no choice but to vanish. Have you noticed how quickly your energy shifts when you consciously choose a hopeful thought over a dreadful one? That shift is the law in motion. Fear always whispers the worst. It says, "What if you lose? What if you fail? What if everything collapses?" But substitution answers with a louder voice. "What if I win? What if I rise? What if everything aligns for my highest good?" Isn't it incredible how simply replacing one question with another changes not only your mood, but also your momentum? The law of substitution is invisible but unbreakable. It does not bend to circumstance, it bends to choice. When fear tries to take hold, you have the authority to substitute it with faith. When doubt knocks, you can answer with certainty. When anxiety floods, you can respond with calm expectation that good is on its way. This is not denial, it is direction. You are directing your mind toward the good, and in doing so, you magnetize it. Consider a garden once more. You cannot grow weeds and roses in the same space without conflict. If you want roses, you must uproot the weeds. Substitution is the act of pulling out the weed of fear and planting the seed of expectation. And once planted, does not expectation grow quickly when watered with trust? Does it not bloom into courage, clarity, and even miracles? Science itself echoes this truth. Psychologists teach about cognitive reframing, the act of replacing a destructive thought with a constructive one. This is not magic, yet it feels miraculous. Why? Because the moment you choose expectation over fear, your body calms, your brain reorders, your energy lifts, and possibilities appear where before you saw none. Isn't it amazing that an invisible thought can alter your visible reality? Fear says, tomorrow will bring trouble. Expectation says, tomorrow will bring opportunity. Fear says, I am weak. Expectation says, strength is rising in me. Fear paints shadows. Expectation paints light. Which picture do you prefer to live inside? Miracles often hide behind the door of expectation. How many times has something good arrived in your life, not because you feared it, but because you dared to expect it? Isn't it true that doors seem to open when you look for them, but remain hidden when you only expect walls? This is the law at work. What you expect, you attract. What you substitute, you experience. Notice something important. Substitution is not passive, it is active. You cannot simply wait for fear to leave, you must replace it. If your mind says, I am not enough, you must speak, I am more than enough. If your heart says, I will fail, you must declare, I am destined to succeed. If anxiety paints disaster, you must imagine peace. Doesn't it empower you to realize that you have that choice every single moment? And with each choice, the law proves itself. The more you replace fear with expectation of good, the less room fear finds in your life. The more you practice substitution, the faster it becomes. What once felt impossible becomes instinctive, and soon, instead of fearing storms, you expect rainbows. Instead of dreading endings, you expect beginnings. Instead of trembling at closed doors, you expect new ones to open. Isn't that the very definition of living in miracles? The invisible law of substitution is always waiting. Fear is loud, but expectation is stronger. Replace one with the other, and you shift your entire reality. Replace despair with hope, and hope grows. Replace doubt with faith, and faith expands. Replace fear with expectation of good, and watch miracles appear right before your eyes. So many believe courage means living without fear, but is that really true? Look closer. The bravest souls in history were not those who felt no fear, but those who felt fear and chose to act anyway. Courage does not erase fear, it silences its authority. Courage says, you may speak, fear, but you will not decide. Isn't that a powerful realization? Fear often shouts, stop. Courage whispers, go. Fear paints failure, but courage dares to paint victory. Fear shows you the storm. Courage shows you the rainbow beyond it. Which voice will you allow to lead? The difference between the courageous and the timid is not the presence of fear. It is the decision about who gets the final word. Doesn't it amaze you that the human heart has that power? Think of a child learning to walk. Is there fear of falling? Of course. But does the child stop? No. The courage to take another step wins over the fear of tumbling down. Every great invention, every bold journey, every groundbreaking idea was born in the same way. The fear was present, but it was not permitted to dictate the ending. Doesn't that remind you that courage is not about being fearless, but about being faithful to the dream inside you? Courage is like a lighthouse. Waves of fear may crash, winds of doubt may howl, but the light remains steady. It does not deny the storm, it simply refuses to be extinguished by it. Isn't that the essence of real strength? To stand, even trembling, and say, I will not be silenced by fear. Fear always tries to claim the final sentence. It says, you will never succeed. Courage interrupts and declares, I will try, and I will rise. Fear says, you are too small. Courage answers, I am greater than you imagine. Fear says, stop now. Courage replies, step forward. Isn't it extraordinary how a single act of defiance against fear rewrites the entire story of your life? Consider the great explorers who set sail across uncharted waters. Do you think they felt no fear as the horizon swallowed the land behind them? The fear was real, but the refusal to bow to it was stronger. Or think of leaders who stood for justice against towering opposition. Did they not tremble inside? Yet they refused to give fear the final word. They chose courage, and in choosing, they changed the course of history. Isn't that proof that courage is not absence of fear, but authority over it? Courage does not always roar, it often whispers. Sometimes courage is not in the grand gesture, but in the quiet decision to try again tomorrow. Sometimes courage is simply getting out of bed when fear tells you to stay hidden. Sometimes courage is saying yes when every cell in your body wants to say no. Isn't it humbling that even the smallest acts of courage carry enormous power? Fear thrives on finality. It wants to close the book with despair. But courage tears the page and writes a new ending. Fear says, this is the end. Courage insists, this is the beginning. Fear stamps impossible. Courage writes possible. Fear ends with silence. Courage ends with song. Who gets the last word in your life? Fear or courage? Courage does not demand perfection. It only demands persistence. You may stumble, you may falter, but courage lifts you to stand again. Have you noticed how fear weakens when you simply take one step forward? It loses its grip because fear cannot grow where courage is chosen. Isn't it amazing how quickly fear shrinks when faced with determination? Every time you refuse fear's final word, you expand your own capacity for life. Each decision of courage adds strength to your character. Each act of defiance against fear writes new possibilities. Each victory, no matter how small, proves the same truth. Fear is loud, but courage is louder. And when courage speaks last, the outcome shifts. Isn't that what makes courage the greatest force of transformation? So remember, courage is not the absence of fear. It is not pretending fear does not exist. It is standing tall in the face of fear, trembling if you must, but declaring, you will not decide for me. It is choosing to walk when your knees shake. It is choosing to speak when your voice quivers. It is choosing to rise when your heart pounds. And in that choice, courage steals the final word from fear. What could be more powerful than that?